Welcome to the Diplomats. Today I have the privilege of having Brazilian Ambassador, His Excellency Marcílio Jardim. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
It's my pleasure to be here, Shakir Bey.
Let me start with some historical questions. When has relationships between Brazil and Turkey started?
You know, they're much more ancient than we would expect, being Brazil, let us say, a modern nation or a new nation. Actually, they date back to the mid-19th century when we signed the Empire of Brazil then and the then Ottoman Empire signed the first agreement, a treaty on trade and navigation, which was signed in London by the plenipotentiaries of the two countries. And that same year, 1858, Brazil sent its first diplomat representative to Istanbul, to the Ottoman court in Istanbul, as Consul General. And this first representative of Brazil to the court of the Sultan stayed here for about 4 to 5 years, and relations then started to take a good flight. And they have been, well, you know, until going on a very good rhythm, although placid, and geography and the distance played a role in order to not to make them too active. But anyway, relations remained. After the Brazilian Empire was terminated in around 1890, and the Ottoman Empire came to its end in 1923, relations remained. And Brazil moved its legation from Istanbul to Ankara in 1931. And ever since, relations went on smoothly, in a quiet way, let's just say, until about 4 or 5 years ago, when they started to really take a different dimension and acquiring dynamism and diversification.
Now the embassy is located in Ankara, and there is a number of consulates and honorary consulates all over Turkey. In which parts of Turkey?
Well, the embassy has been in Ankara, as I said, since 1931. And we also have one consulate general in Istanbul, and a network of 7 consulates at the honorary level, but extremely efficient and useful in different cities across Turkey. We have in Gaziantep, Adana, Mersin, Antalya, Izmir, Bursa, plus and Eskişehir now. Plus the consulate general here. So it makes, you know, 7 plus 1, 8, plus the embassy, 9. We have, let's say, 9 representations in Turkey. And this number reflects, in my view, the intensity, the diversity, and the large amount of interest that Brazil has in Turkey, and they show our firm determination to conduct our relations with this country in a comprehensive way.
It seems that Brazil is placing an emphasis on its relations with Turkey, and by looking at the number we can say that. Are we planning to, or is there any plan to promote bilateral trade relationship between Turkey and Brazil?
Well, going back to our first Consul General in Istanbul in 1858, I was lucky to have read some of his dispatches, and he was a gentleman who was very much oriented towards fostering trade between the two empires. As Brazil then produced basically only coffee as its only and major commodity, exportable, and Turkish coffee being by then an international well-known product and delicacy, the major aim was to use Turkey, Istanbul, and the ports, especially Trabzon in the Black Sea, as outposts for the export of Brazilian coffee, not only to Turkey, but to other domains under the then Ottoman Empire, and from Trabzon even reaching the then Russian Empire and other areas in this vast region. But what about 150 years later, we are here with a very intense and growingly more intense trade relation. The Turkish present government has been showing an enormous interest in opening more markets for its products, and Brazil has always viewed Turkey as a major partner in trade and commerce. So it is only too natural that with the intensification of the political and diplomatic dialogue in the bilateral level, but also between the two countries' diplomacies in multilateral organizations, basically, and number one at United Nations, the impact on bilateral trade was very strong. And just to give you some figures, last year, two-way trades, meaning exports of Turkey to Brazil and exports of Brazil to Turkey, reached slightly over $2.5 billion, with surplus for the Brazilian exports. This year, in the first 3 months, January, February, and March alone, exports from Brazil to Turkey reached around 550 million US dollars. Turkish exports to Brazil reached $200 million. There is still a difference in terms of the amounts, but the Turkish private sector, the Turkish industrial and export-oriented sector has been doing very important work towards increasing its trade and commercial relations with Brazil. I would say that organizations like TUSCON, like TOB, DAIC, and others, the Istanbul Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for instance, and some local chambers, the Izmir one is a very good example, are working hard on going further into the Brazilian market. At the same time, these initiatives offer the opportunity for a better reciprocal knowledge between the different business players of the two countries, and also helps not only an increase in Brazilian exports to Turkey, but also an increase in investment, you see. So we have also some Brazilian companies that have and are investing in Turkey. There are also some Turkish investments in Brazil.
Which sectors are interested in investing in Turkey, and which sectors might be interested in investing in Brazil from Turkey?
Let's say the Brazilians, on the Brazilian side, investment in Turkey has been majorly directed towards energy and for oil prospection, natural gas prospection. Brazilian oil company Petrobras has a subsidiary in Turkey, Petrobras Turkey Limited, with headquarters in Ankara. And Petrobras has just concluded very thorough exploration of oil in the Black Sea, and they now, the findings are considered as a technical reserve, and the company is now going very likely towards the Mediterranean basin, further in southeast Turkey.
The 2014 World Cup will take place in Brazil, and
yes,
probably your government is now spending on infrastructure and construction. Are there any Turkish firms, construction firms, doing business in Brazil and contributing to the efforts of World Cup preparations?
Well, Shakir, you know, most of these works will be done through tenders, international tenders, and therefore open to bidders from different countries. One thing is, well, universally known, which is the capacity and the scale of Turkish engineering contractor firms in, you know, in building infrastructure, in building airports, and also into big installations like sports stadiums and arenas. So here, recently in Istanbul, this new Galatasaray arena was inaugurated. It's a major stadium by any international standards, and Turkish companies would be and will be very, very welcome. I know that some 2 or 3 companies of a very high standing are already holding contacts with counterparts in Brazil in order to make through joint ventures their bids to take part in this vast program of construction and refurbishing of installations already existing. And there's not only the World Cup in 2014. A couple of years later, we'll have the Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro in 2016. So it won't cease the need for, you know, infrastructure works and to update the already existing stadiums or even public services, and airports, for instance, are one of the major areas in which opportunities for investments exist. Brazilian engineering companies and constructions are also extremely powerful and have international experience, but it seems to me that there will be such an amount of work, public work, to be done